the Declaration, the words that shook the galaxy. They called it a benevolent intervention. Across 100 star systems, the Galactic Empire's silver insignia shimmered in every sky, on hollow screens, station feeds, and neural implants. The voice that followed was smooth, artificial, and laced with contempt barely hidden behind polished diplomacy. To the species designating itself humanity, you have proven yourselves volatile, emotionally unstable, and irrationally attached to territorial conflict. The Empire has therefore voted unanimously to assume stewardship over Earth and its colonies. Resistance is expected. It will be met with mercy. We understand that fear drives your defiance. Lay down your arms. Accept integration. Survive. The message played in every major human language. The last word, survive, hung like a threat more than a promise. Panic rippled through Earth like a solar flare. In the icy corridors of Europa, mining outposts, in Martian bunkers, on lunar research bases, humans stood still, blinking at the screens. Some wept. Some shouted. Many simply sat, stunned. On Earth, riots sparked in London, protests erupted in Sao Paulo, and silence settled over New York like ash. Billions felt the same cold spike run through their veins. But in Geneva, buried beneath layers of steel and satellite shielding, a war council gathered. The United Earth Council, formed after first contact 2 decades earlier, had known this day might come. Still, they had hoped, prayed, that diplomacy and distance would buy peace. They were wrong. Begin preliminary surrender protocols, one of the counselors said, voice shaking. We can't stand against a fleet that controls half the galaxy. We need to minimize casualties. Minimize, a voice cut in. You think they'll minimize anything? The room turned. General Adrian Voss stood at the end of the table, back straight, her Earth Forces uniform still dusty from recent war games. Her hair was tightly coiled in a bun, her jaw clenched like it had been chiseled from stone. Counselor Yuno frowned. General, with respect. With respect, she interrupted, stepping forward. I watched my brother die during the Arcturus peace convoy. Peace. That was the word on our banner when an Empire drone turned his ship into dust. You can't seriously be suggesting war. I'm suggesting we stop lying to ourselves. This isn't an invitation. It's conquest disguised as mercy. A long silence. Then Adrian reached into her coat, pulled out a simple data chip, and inserted it into the council chamber console. The display behind them lit up with grainy images, battle maps, fleet formations, military simulations. These are the results of Project Aegis. We've spent the last 10 years preparing. Not for war, but for this war. Because we knew. Eventually they'd come. One of the counselors leaned forward. You think we can win? No, Adrian said. I think we can make them bleed. Another silence. This time longer. She turned away from the table and stepped onto the small broadcast platform reserved for executive global messages. She tapped the panel. A red light blinked to life. Across Earth and every human colony, screens flickered. Panic paused. The world leaned in. Adrienne's face appeared, calm but burning. People of Earth, the Galactic Empire has declared that we fear war, that we will surrender because we are fragile, that our emotions are a weakness. I stand here as a soldier, a sister, a daughter of Earth, and I say this. Let them come. We have feared, but we have survived. Now we rage, and we will teach the stars what that means. Across a frozen Martian base, a technician clenched his fist. In orbit above Europa, a pilot whispered, "Hell yes." In Geneva, the War Council sat in stunned silence as the room began to buzz. Messages coming in from fleets, outposts, militias, and colonies. One line kept repeating, "Awaiting orders, General Voss." Adrian turned back to the council. Her voice lowered. "I won't wait for death in a cage of diplomacy. If no one else will lead us, I will." No one stopped her as she walked out of the chamber, her coat flaring behind her like a flag. Behind her, Earth stirred. The Empire had made one critical mistake. They had assumed humanity feared war. What they didn't realize was that war was in their bones, and fury was something no Empire simulation could predict. Fury forged. The iron within. The sun rose over a planet that had changed overnight. In the hours following Adrian Voss's address, Earth's war machine awoke from slumber. Factories once used for civilian spacecraft switched to military output. Old alliances rekindled. Satellites retasked. Engineers drafted. Humanity had never been united for long. Not until the Empire gave them a reason to be. Voss stood in the command center of Echelon Base, a subterranean fortress carved into the Andes. Holograms flickered around her, projecting fleet movements, fuel shortages, research updates. The room buzzed with tension and purpose. Every officer present knew history was being written with each decision. "Status on Aegis systems?" she asked. "Active in orbit," replied Lieutenant Rafi Chun, his fingers dancing across a control slate. "The adaptive shields are holding up in simulations. They'll hold against standard plasma munitions. But if the Empire deploys those pulse crackers, they will," Adrian said. "They won't underestimate us again." Rafi nodded grimly and moved on. By the third day, the Luna foundries were in full production, turning salvaged Empire tech from earlier border skirmishes into reverse-engineered drones and rail cannons. On Mars, the Crimson Cliffs Training Corps pushed volunteers through 20-hour drills. On Titan, engineers began installing atmospheric ion disruptors to cloak the outer colonies from long-range sensors. Adrian moved between worlds like fire in a storm. She addressed troops personally at each major base. No scripts, no medals, only fury and resolve. At Mars Command, she stood on a dust-choked platform before 10,000 soldiers in exosuits, red soil sticking to their boots. "You're not just fighting for Earth," she told them. "You're fighting for the right to choose fear and still stand. You are fighting for every race that's ever been crushed under their boot. If we fall, they forget us. If we rise, they remember us forever." When she finished, every soldier slammed their gauntlets to their chest plate. 10,000 echoes of defiance. Her closest circle worked tirelessly at her side. Lieutenant Rafi Chun, overseeing tech and cyber warfare, had developed what he called logic mines, digital viruses that could disrupt Empire targeting systems mid-battle. Colonel Aria Kinte, tall and solemn, wore her old armor, black with silver trim, etched with the crest of her now-extinct people, the Varnithi. The Empire had erased her world. She would not let them erase another. Dr. Malek Vero, a former professor-turned-war scientist, led Project Mirage, cloaking ships with synthetic neutrino fields stolen from Empire blueprints. "They won't see us coming," he muttered, eyes hollow with caffeine and revenge. Empire probes began skimming human borders by day 5. Adrian ordered Operation Ember, small, coordinated strikes on the probes using repurposed mining lasers and modified hull-borne railguns. No human ships were lost, but every probe was returned to Empire space in pieces. The message was clear. "We see you. We're not afraid." Empire propaganda fired back. Human retaliation is expected and ill-advised. Their sleek broadcasts intoned. Their rage is misdirected emotion. The Empire offers peace through dominance. Adrian recorded her reply in orbit above Earth, inside the warship Saber's Oath. She stood before a wide viewport, the blue planet gleaming behind her like a defiant eye. "You call our rage emotion. We call it memory. Every child orphaned by your wars. Every world you sterilized into silence. You mistake our pain for weakness. You mistake our passion for instability. You mistake us." She leaned forward slightly, voice hard as metal. "You want peace through dominance? You'll get war through defiance." The Empire blocked the transmission within minutes. But it was too late. It had already been copied, fragmented, and embedded into every human-aligned network across the quadrant. Even some alien worlds, those once allied or subjugated by the Empire, began whispering. The humans are fighting back. 10 days into preparation, the first strategic warning came in from the asteroid belt. Empire fleet signature detected. They were coming. 50 vessels, a forward vanguard, likely to test defenses. Adrian stood in the Sabre's war room, staring at the fleet trajectory. Vargon Reach, she said, tapping the system on the holomap. They think they can punch through there, divide Mars from Earth. Classic Empire wedge doctrine. Arya stepped forward. We'll be outnumbered 2-1. Not outplayed, Adrian replied. She looked around the room at her team. I want every stealth rig we have deployed. Bring Mirage online. Load the logic mines. Move our reserve fleet to the outer edge and mask their signal signatures. Rafi's eyes widened. You're baiting them. I'm going to show them how dangerous a species becomes when it stops trying to impress the galaxy and starts fighting for its home. She walked to the comm panel and opened a channel. All human forces. This is General Voss. We have 13 hours. Steel yourself. Remember who we are. Tomorrow, we don't wait for war to reach us. Tomorrow, we burn the sky. The Battle of Vargon Reach. When fury meets fire. The stars above Vargon Reach were silent no more. They erupted in fire and fury as the Empire fleet pierced the edge of human space. 50 warships, sleek, perfect, machines of conquest, sliced across the dark void in flawless formation. To them, this was another routine campaign. A message. To humanity, it was a challenge. And Adrian Voss had every intention of answering. The Sabre's oath hovered just beyond the asteroid fields of Vargon Reach, its hull dark, running cold. Beside it, in the shadows, floated 30 other vessels, stealth rigs activated, emissions suppressed. Above, disguised as mining outposts, tiny signal jammers blinked to life, distorting Empire scans just enough to cloak the trap. Inside the war room, Adrienne's hands were folded behind her back. Her eyes tracked the enemy's trajectory like a hawk locked on prey. Status? She asked. Logic mines deployed, Rafi reported, voice taut. Project Mirage holding. We've got a 20-minute window before they reach real sensor range. They think they're sneaking up on us, Arya added, smirking. Arrogant bastards. Adrian gave a short nod. Let's humble them. The Empire fleet entered the asteroid belt with imperial confidence, rotating in perfect unison. Their central command ship, ISV Obedience, emitted a wide-spectrum ping meant to scatter resistance. Instead, it triggered a silent bloom of chaos. The first logic mine detonated within the command ship's NAV system, injecting a worm into their battle AI. Immediately, the Obedience's thrusters fired in the wrong direction, sending it drifting out of formation. Before the Empire could react, human warships emerged from the dark like ghosts. Lasers, rail cannons, and plasma-tipped missiles rained down from every angle. The Skull, a Martian dreadnought, sliced clean through an Empire cruiser with its spinal gun. The Tycho Wraith, built in secret under the lunar ice, blinked in and out of cloak, lancing through enemy hulls like a phantom. Empire ships tried to regroup, but the jammed signals and false sensor echoes made it impossible. Each captain believed they were surrounded, and in a way they were. Surrounded by a species who had something to prove. Adrian led from the Sabre's oath, her voice calm over calms. Sector 7 cut across the northern belt, trapped the destroyers between our wing and the mines. Lunar Wing, blind their port-side sensors. Bring them into the storm. Humanity didn't fight like the Empire. They fought ugly, with grit and spite and improvisation. And it worked. Empire doctrine collapsed under unpredictability. The Obedience regained control, but too late. 3 human cruisers slammed into its flank in a suicide run, breaking its hull open like a metal egg. Adrian watched the explosion through the forward viewport. That's for Arcturus, she whispered. On the lower deck, Rafi hooped. Command ship down. Repeat. Empire command ship is down. Across the fleet, human cheers echoed, short-lived, because the second wave hit like a hammer. 12 new Empire warships, reinforcements hidden just beyond sensor range, blinked into real space behind the human lines. They had anticipated a counter-trap. Now Adrian's forces were the ones surrounded. Orders? Arya asked, blade in hand, as if she'd leap into space herself, if needed. Adrian stared at the flashing red dots, outnumbered, split across the belt, half their fleet already damaged. She closed her eyes. In her mind, she saw the war games, the simulations, the impossible scenarios. And then she saw Earth. Blue, stubborn Earth. No retreat, she said. No surrender. She opened the fleet-wide channel. This is General Voss. The Empire thinks we're finished. They think their numbers mean victory. I say, let's remind them what fury looks like. Split the fleet. Scatter to fire teams. We fight in every direction. We blind them, bleed them, choke them with wreckage. Let them know. They stepped into the storm. And so humanity roared. The second battle was worse. Chaotic. Desperate. The Venator Pike, a human carrier, exploded mid-barrage, taking out 3 enemy corvettes with it. Fragments of hull and bodies scattered across the void. On board the Argus Lance, Dr. Vero triggered the untested Mirage Core, cloaking half the fleet for 60 seconds of impossible repositioning. It gave just enough of an edge to turn the tide. Empire ships began to fall out of sync. One by one, they broke. Their formation disintegrated. Their confidence, so sure, so smug, eroded under the unrelenting human assault. The fury they dismissed was now swallowing them whole. On the bridge of the Saber's oath, Adrian stood unmoving. An officer shouted, "We've broken their line. They're retreating. Ma'am, they're running." A breath of silence followed. Then, cheers, not just on the bridge. Across comms, across sectors, across the belt. The impossible had happened. Humanity had stood against the might of the Galactic Empire, and the Empire blinked first. Later, as the dead were counted and wreckage scoured, Adrian sat alone in her quarters, watching the replay in silence. Rafi entered quietly. "Half our fleet's gone," he said. "I know, but we held. We did." He paused. "And the message?" Adrian looked up. Her eyes were red, not from grief, though there was grief, but from fire. She walked to the console and activated the transmission beacon. Across the quadrant, survivors, rebels, silent watchers, and afraid allies alike heard her voice. "We are not perfect. We are not a utopia. We are flawed. We bleed. We rage. But we do not bow. We do not break quietly. We are human. And you, Empire, just learned what that means." Fury echoes. The war they didn't expect. The wreckage of the Empire's forward fleet drifted in the cold of Vargon Reach for weeks. Blackened hulls, cracked engine cores, frozen corpses. To the Empire, it was an anomaly, a tactical error, a momentary break in the machine. But to the galaxy, it was a beacon, because for the first time in centuries, someone had bloodied the Empire and lived. In the months following the battle, whispers spread through the stars. On the trade moons of the Venari cluster, barkeepers recited stories of human vessels dancing between dreadnoughts. On subjugated worlds like Carex and Venta Prime, resistance cells began to emerge, painting the symbol of Earth's fury, a cracked circle wreathed in flame on broken walls. Even within the Empire's own military caste, there were murmurs. If humans can fight, some said, maybe they can lead. Inside Earth's war headquarters, buried in reinforced bunkers beneath Iceland, Adrian Voss reviewed intercepted transmissions from Imperial space. Empire fleet movements had changed. Slower, cautious. She smirked. "They're scared," Arias said, standing beside her. Adrian nodded. "They should be. Do we press?" "Not yet," Adrian said. "We're not ready for a full counterstrike, but we are ready for something else." Rafi leaned forward. "Operation Emberlight?" Adrian looked out the window, where new human ships, faster, sleeker, lifted from shipyards that didn't exist 6 months ago. "Light the matches," she said. "Let's burn the edges." What followed wasn't a war. It was a message. Human vessels began striking deep into Empire-controlled zones, not to conquer, but to remind. They hit supply depots, communication hubs, slave outposts. They freed prisoners and left calling cards. Humanity does not kneel. Rage remembers. Empire garrisons began pulling back, consolidating. Paranoia bloomed. For every human ship destroyed, 2 more appeared elsewhere. Fragments of the Earthborn swarm, fighting not for conquest, but for the right to remain. Back on Earth, something else began to shift. The war didn't just forge technology, it reshaped people. Children in underground shelters trained with virtual rifles, quoting Adrienne's speeches like scripture. Former politicians became quartermasters. Artists designed propaganda posters that reached across space. A woman in uniform, fire in her eyes, with the words, "Let them come." Colonies once separated by years of infighting now spoke with one voice. They weren't just earthlings anymore. They were human. 1 year after Vargon Reach, the Empire returned with a full invasion fleet. 200 ships, Titans, behemoths, orbital razors. They descended on the Sol system like a divine punishment. Adrian stood on the bridge of the Fortress-class dreadnought Hell's Gate, humanity's first true war titan, forged from salvaged Empire alloys and powered by a fusion core scavenged from the Obedience. As the Empire vessels appeared like a tide of death, Adrian opened a wideband channel. To the galaxy, to her people, to the stars. This is General Adrian Voss of Earth. A year ago, you told us we feared war. You were right. We did. But fear is not surrender. Fear makes you sharp. And our fear became fury. Now, you'll see what we made of it. And then the battle began. Not a battle, a storm. Human ships moved like wolves, each one fighting with the knowledge that they were the last line between freedom and extinction. Project Aegis, shielding held against the Empire's opening volley. New quantum strike weapons ripped through enemy destroyers with surgical precision. The Tycho Wraith reappeared, now piloted by a crew who had survived 3 suicide runs and still came back for more. On Mars, rail cannons carved into mountains fired kinetic slugs into orbit, knocking enemy ships from the sky like fallen gods. And in the heart of the Hell's Gate, Adrian gave the final command. Target the command ship. Break their chain. Let them know our fury does not fade. The Empire's flagship, a mobile citadel, shattered under the combined fire of 12 human dreadnoughts. And just like that, they broke again. The Empire's fleet fractured. Some ships surrendered. Others fled. One even joined the human side, its crew, inspired by what they saw, defecting mid-battle. It wasn't just a victory. It was a turning point. Weeks later, the United Earth Council offered the first interstellar declaration of peace, not to the Empire, but to its former subjects. The message? We do not seek to rule. We seek to rise. Stand with us, and you will never stand alone again. Across the stars, flags were burned. Empire statues were pulled down. And on a dozen worlds once thought lost, the symbol of Earth's fury rose like a sunrise. Adrian Voss never declared herself empress. She refused medals, refused retirement. When asked what fueled her fight, she answered simply, "They told me we feared war." And they were right. But fear wasn't the end. It was the spark. The galaxy would never forget what humanity had done. Not because of conquest, but because of rage. Because fury, once forged, echoes forever.